The lake wasn't just water to me, it was history. It was my father teaching me how to fish on misty mornings, my mother watching from the porch with coffee in hand, my kids skipping stones across glassy ripples. It was ours, bought and paid for when I inherited the land from my grandparents, a slice of peace in a world that loved to take. And that's exactly why I knew it wouldn't stay untouched for long. The trouble started with a knock at my door. 3 sharp raps, too confident to be a neighbor, too impatient to be a friend. When I opened it, there she stood, Karen Donnelly, HOA president, bleach blonde helmet hair, lips pursed like she was sucking a lemon, a clipboard in hand like it was a weapon. "Mr. McAllister," she said, without the faintest attempt at warmth, "we need to discuss your lake." "My lake?" I leaned on the doorframe. "Pretty sure you mean my private property, the one with no trespassing signs every 20 feet? She ignored that, scanning my face like I was an obstacle she'd already planned to bulldoze. "The community's growing. More families are moving in. We've voted that the lake should be for public use, boating, swimming, fishing. It's an asset wasted in your hands." I almost laughed. "You voted?" She smiled thinly. "Yes, unanimously." "Well, that's cute, but you can't vote to take something that isn't yours." Her smile sharpened. "Actually, under certain public easement clauses, if a resource benefits the greater community." "Karen, I cut in. There is no clause in existence that's going to magic my property into yours. You step foot on my land, I'll call the sheriff." Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't argue. "We'll see," she said, turning on her heel. That "we'll see" gnawed at me. Over the next week, I saw HOA board members circling my property line in golf carts. Some even took pictures of the lake from the road, whispering like they were casing the joint. Then came the letter, official-looking, stamped, titled "Notice of Public Use Filing." Karen had filed paperwork with the county claiming that the lake was a community resource that had been historically enjoyed by the neighborhood. Total lies. I'd had trespassers before, sure, but they were the kind that ran when I racked a shotgun. This was a hostile takeover, dressed up in bureaucratic nonsense. I called my lawyer. He told me the paperwork was flimsy, but if Karen kept pushing, the county might hold a hearing. And hearings had a way of going sideways, especially if the public sentiment turned against me. Karen wasn't just trying to take the lake, she was trying to make me the villain. I started noticing flyers in mailboxes. "Why should one man hog the water? Make the lake ours." Pictures of kids with fishing poles, moms with picnic baskets, all smiles, none of them ever having set foot near my lake in reality. The whisper campaign worked. People who used to wave now scowled when I drove by. My kids told me they were getting comments at school about their dad being selfish. Karen even cornered me at the grocery store. "You can still avoid all this bad press," she said sweetly. "Sign the easement. Let the community enjoy it." I stared at her cart. Organic fruit, imported cheese, a bottle of overpriced Chardonnay. "You ever think maybe I enjoy it?" Her lips curled. "People like you always think they can keep everything for themselves, but the world's changing. You'll see." That night I couldn't sleep. Every sound outside made me wonder if someone was already trespassing, measuring the shoreline for their imaginary boat dock. I looked out the window, moonlight glinting on the water, and a thought hit me, cold and sharp. If Karen wanted my lake so badly, what if it simply wasn't there anymore?
When the sun rose, I sat on my porch with coffee and waited. The first scream came from Karen's direction. The scream was followed by another voice, then another. By the time I wandered down my driveway, Karen and 2 of her bored lackeys were standing at the edge of what used to be my lake, staring at the cracked, sun-baked pit like they'd just discovered a crime scene. Karen's face was a study in confusion and fury. What happened to it?" she demanded, spinning toward me as I approached. I took a long sip of coffee. "You're gonna have to be more specific." "The lake! Where's the lake?" I looked out over the dry basin, then back at her. Huh, guess the water decided it didn't want to be part of the community either. Her eyes narrowed to slits. You did this. I shrugged. Did what? Removed a nuisance mosquito habitat? Helped with drought management? Who's to say? You drained it, she accused, her voice climbing an octave. And if I did, it's my water, on my land, unless you think the HOA controls the weather now. The two board members shifted uncomfortably. They hadn't signed up for this. Karen stormed toward me until she was inches from my face. This is destruction of community resources. The county will... I cut her off with a grin. Funny thing about community resources, Karen, they actually have to exist. But by all means, let's head to that hearing and tell the county all about the big bad man who owns a big empty hole in the ground. Her mouth opened, then closed. She turned away sharply, marching toward her golf cart like a general retreating from a lost battle. By the time the county hearing rolled around a few hours later, word had spread. People who came expecting to rally for lake access instead found themselves whispering about the vanishing lake. The county clerk looked baffled when Karen presented her case. She kept holding up old photos of the lake like they were evidence in a murder trial. It was there last week, she insisted. This man drained it just to spite us. The clerk glanced at me. Mr. McAllister, do you have any comment? I stood slow and deliberate. Yes, ma'am. That lake was a private pond, fed by a controlled water source that I also own. I've been meaning to drain it for maintenance and habitat relocation. Last night seemed as good a time as any. Karen sputtered. Habitat relocation? I nodded. All the fish were moved to a new pond on my property, a smaller one, behind locked gates. You see, I realized that the presence of the lake was causing tension in the community. I'd hate for my neighbors to waste time and energy fighting over something that was never theirs to begin with. So I solved the problem. A low murmur rippled through the room. The clerk shuffled papers. Ms. Donnelly, without the body of water in question, your filing is effectively moot. Moot? Karen's voice cracked. You can't just let him... It's private property, and no longer meets the definition of a public use body of water. She banged her gavel. Case dismissed. The sound was sweeter than any symphony. Karen spun on me as the room emptied. You think you've won? You think the neighborhood won't hate you for this? I leaned in just enough for only her to hear. I don't care if they hate me, Karen. I care that you can't touch a single drop of my water ever again. She left without another word. Over the next few days, I made some improvements. The new pond went behind 8-foot fencing topped with barbed wire. Security cameras went up, motion lights installed. The whole setup looked more like a private vault than a fishing hole. Neighbors who had sided with Karen now avoided eye contact. A few even muttered apologies when no one else was around. But Karen? She couldn't stand the humiliation. She'd drive her golf cart past my property line, slowing enough to glare through the fence before speeding off. One night, I caught her trying to peer over the fence with a stepladder. She froze when the motion lights hit her, then stumbled back, red-faced. I didn't even say a word, just waved. Months passed. The once bustling HOA meetings grew quieter. Karen's influence waned. Eventually, I heard she'd step down as president, citing health reasons. I called it what it was, defeat. And the best part? Every summer evening, I'd sit by my new private pond, a cold beer in hand, watching the fish swim lazily under the setting sun. No kids splashing, no boats cutting wakes, no entitled neighbors calling it the community's lake. Just me, the water, and the sweet knowledge that the only thing Karen could do was watch from the outside. And if she listened closely on those still nights, maybe she could hear it. The gentle splash of my fish living their best lives in a pond she'd never touch.